Good evening everyone, and thank you so much for being here tonight to share with us this new adventure of Lieutenant Columbo. Your loyalty touches us deeply, and we hope this story will accompany you toward a peaceful and restful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss any of our stories, and leave us a little like to encourage us to keep doing this work that we love so much. Your comments are also very precious to us. Tell us what you think of this investigation, and above all, share your ideas with us. Which detective would you like to see again? Which character fascinates you? Your suggestions inspire us. Now, make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and let yourself be carried away by this new investigation where Columbo will discover that professional rivalry can lead to the most extreme acts. The campus of the University of Southern California gleamed under the autumn sun of Los Angeles on this Tuesday afternoon in October. The red brick buildings covered in ivy, the green lawns dotted with students absorbed in their books, and the tree-lined paths created that unique atmosphere of great American universities, a blend of tradition, intellectual ambition, and promises of the future. In the Department of Molecular Biology, one of the most prestigious in the country, a particular tension hung in the air that day. Professor Victor Thornton, 62 years old, holder of the chair of molecular biology and the clear favorite for the Nobel Prize in medicine, walked quickly through the corridors of the research laboratory. The sound of his heels clicking on the linoleum floor betrayed his agitation. Victor was a man of medium height, slim almost to the point of thinness, with carefully combed silver-gray hair and tortoise-shell glasses that gave his angular face a perpetually stern expression. He wore his usual white lab coat over an impeccably tailored three-piece suit. Even while working, Victor maintained an appearance of professional elegance that reflected his status in the academic world. He entered his private office abruptly, slamming the door behind him with such force that the framed diplomas and certificates on the walls trembled. Those walls testified to a brilliant career, a doctorate from Harvard, a postdoctoral fellowship at Cambridge, membership in the National Academy of Sciences, winner of the Lasker Award, and a dozen other distinctions that made Victor Thornton one of the most respected molecular biologists of his generation. But today, all that glory seemed threatened. On his desk lay an open copy of the scientific journal Nature. The article, published that very morning, was titled "A Revolutionary New Approach in the Treatment of Pancreatic Cancer, a Major Breakthrough," and bore the signature of Professor David Chen. David Chen. The name alone was enough to raise Victor's blood pressure. David was his longtime rival, his former PhD student who had become a competing professor in the same department. For 15 years, they had waged a fierce academic war for research grants, prestigious publications, and international recognition. And now, if this article was correct and Victor had to admit bitterly that it seemed to be David had just achieved exactly the breakthrough that Victor himself had been pursuing for 5 years. A breakthrough that could win a Nobel Prize. A breakthrough that could change the entire landscape of cancer research. Victor read the article for the third time, his hands trembling slightly. The methodology was brilliant, the results were spectacular, the implications were revolutionary. It was exactly the kind of work that catapults a scientific career to the highest peaks. But something troubled Victor. Something in the data seemed familiar, too familiar. Certain graphs, certain experimental results looked strangely similar to data he himself had generated in his own laboratory 6 months earlier. Data that had never been published. Data that was supposed to be confidential. A knock sounded at the door. "Come in," said Victor in a tense voice. The door opened and David Chen entered, a broad smile on his lips. He was a man in his 40s, a generation younger than Victor, with short black hair, frameless glasses, and an enthusiastic energy that contrasted with Victor's aristocratic coldness. "Victor," said David with a joviality that seemed sincere but sounded to Victor like mockery. "Did you see the article in Nature? Incredible. 15 years of hard work finally bearing fruit." 15 years, repeated Victor slowly, placing the magazine on his desk. "Interesting, because some of this data looks strangely similar to my own research. Research that I never published. David's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. I don't know what you're talking about. My team generated all this data independently through years of rigorous experimentation. Really? Then how do you explain that the graph on page 4, the one showing the cell survival curve, is practically identical to the graph I presented at the department's internal seminar 6 months ago? A seminar that was supposed to be confidential. David stiffened. Similar results are not unusual in science, Victor. If we're working on the same problem with similar approaches, it's normal to obtain similar results. Similar results, perhaps. But identical graphs? Curves that overlap perfectly? That, David, is more than coincidence. That is data theft. Be careful what you're insinuating, said David, his voice losing all trace of joviality. Accusing a colleague of scientific fraud is a very serious matter. You'd better have solid proof. Oh, I will have proof. I'm going to request a formal investigation from the University Ethics Committee, and when they compare your raw data with mine, the truth will come out. David stared at him for a long moment, his face turning pale. You really want to do this? You really want to tarnish your own reputation and the department's with unfounded accusations? My reputation will survive. Yours, on the other hand. Victor smiled coldly. Well, we'll see. David left the office, slamming the door. Victor remained alone, staring out the window at the students crossing the campus, unaware of the drama unfolding in the academic heights above their heads. That evening, Victor worked late in his laboratory, meticulously gathering all the evidence he would present to the ethics committee: his lab notebooks, his raw data, his original graphs, everything that could prove David Chen had stolen his research and published it as his own. It was nearly 11 p.m. when he heard the laboratory door open. Victor looked up from his microscope and saw David enter, looking agitated. David, what are you doing here so late? We need to talk, Victor. Really talk. Not with anger, not with accusations, but as two rational scientists. Victor hesitated, then gestured toward a chair. Very well. Talk. David sat down, running a hand through his hair. Look, I know we've been rivals for years. I know you see me as an usurper, your former student who dared to challenge you on your own turf. But this pancreatic cancer research is truly my work, Victor. My team and I spent 5 years on this project. Then why do some of the data look exactly like mine? Because we're working on the same problem. Because science is not an island. We all build on the work of others. If our results are similar, it's because we've discovered the same fundamental biological truth. I don't believe you, said Victor coldly. And tomorrow morning, I'm filing a formal complaint with the ethics committee. David stood up abruptly, his face hardening. If you do that, you will regret it, Victor. I promise you. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Think carefully about the consequences before you trigger something you can't control. David left the laboratory, leaving Victor alone with his evidence and his growing anger. The next morning, Wednesday, David Chen did not show up for his 9 a.m. lecture. This was unusual. David was known for his meticulous punctuality. By 11 a.m., when he still hadn't answered his assistant's phone calls, the department had sent someone to check his office. What they found was horrifying. David Chen was slumped over his desk, a spilled coffee cup beside him, his eyes open, staring into nothing. He was dead. An intense academic rivalry, accusations of data theft, and now a brilliant scientist found dead in his office. Lieutenant Columbo would soon discover that in the ruthless world of university research, some are willing to kill for glory. The arrival of the police on the university campus created considerable commotion. Students and staff gathered in small groups, whispering and speculating about what had happened. Police cars and an ambulance were parked in front of the biology building, their flashing lights creating a surreal atmosphere in the usually peaceful campus setting. Lieutenant Columbo arrived around noon in his old Peugeot, parking crookedly in a spot reserved for professors. He got out slowly, adjusting his crumpled raincoat despite the California heat, and stood for a moment observing the building, thoughtfully chewing on his unlit cigar. Sergeant Wilson was waiting for him at the entrance. "Lieutenant, glad you're here. We have a suspicious death. Professor David Chen, 48 years old, molecular biologist, found dead in his office this morning around 11 a.m. "Suspicious how?" asked Columbo, taking out his worn notebook. "The medical examiner suspects poisoning. There was a half-empty coffee cup on his desk. Chen appears to have died very quickly, perhaps within minutes of drinking the coffee. Did anyone else touch the cup?" "No. The assistant who found him had the presence of mind not to touch anything and call the police immediately." Columbo nodded and entered the building. David Chen's office was on the third floor, a medium-sized room cluttered with books, scientific journals, and laboratory equipment. The body had already been removed by the medical examiner, but the scene remained intact for investigation. Columbo examined the room carefully, his eyes narrowed, noting every detail. The coffee cup was still on the desk, labeled for analysis. Next to it was a silver thermos, also half full of coffee. "This thermos," said Columbo, pointing at it without touching it, "does it belong to the victim?" "Apparently yes," said Wilson. "His assistant says he always brought coffee from home in this thermos. He didn't like the campus cafeteria coffee. So he poured himself coffee from his own thermos this morning. That's what we think." Columbo scratched the back of his neck with his usual puzzled expression. "Could someone else have had access to this thermos?" "It's hard to say. It was probably in his office since he arrived this morning around 8 a.m. Anyone in the department could technically have entered and put something in it. Or," said Columbo thoughtfully, "the poison could have been put in the thermos before he left home this morning." Wilson frowned. "You think someone from his family?" "I'm not thinking anything yet. I'm just asking questions." Columbo turned to Wilson. "Tell me about Professor Chen. What kind of man was he?" "From what we've been told, he was a brilliant scientist, highly respected. He had just published a major article in a prestigious journal, something about cancer treatment. But apparently there were tensions." "What kind of tensions?" "With another professor, Victor Thornton. They had been rivals for years, and just yesterday they had a very heated argument. Several people heard them shouting at each other." "About what?" "Apparently Thornton was accusing Chen of stealing his research data. He was threatening to file a complaint with the University Ethics Committee." "Interesting," murmured Columbo. "Very interesting. Where is this Professor Thornton now?" "In his own office at the end of the hallway." "Would you like to speak with him?" "Oh yes, absolutely." Victor Thornton's office was noticeably larger and more prestigious than Chen's, the privileges of rank and seniority. When Columbo entered, Victor was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, looking composed, but with dark circles under his eyes that betrayed a difficult night. "Professor Thornton," said Columbo. "Lieutenant Columbo, Los Angeles Police. Sorry to disturb you in these difficult circumstances." "Lieutenant." Victor stood up and shook his hand briefly. "It's terrible what happened to David." "Absolutely terrible." "Yes, it is a tragedy." "Were you close?" Victor hesitated. "We were colleagues. David was my former PhD student. I trained him 15 years ago." "But you weren't really friends?" "No. Things changed over the years. David became very competitive. We worked in the same field and there were tensions." "I heard you had an argument yesterday," said Columbo, consulting his notebook as if checking his notes. Victor stiffened slightly. "A professional discussion that became a little heated. It happens in academic circles. What was it about? Questions of intellectual property. David had just published an article in Nature, a very prestigious journal. But some of the data looked suspiciously similar to my own unpublished research. You thought he had stolen your data? I was certain of it, and I told him I was going to file a complaint with the University Ethics Committee. How did he react? He was furious. He denied it vehemently and told me that if I filed that complaint, I would regret it. He threatened you. Not directly, but the tone was hostile. Columbo nodded, scribbling in his notebook. Professor Thornton, where were you this morning between 7:30 and 9 a.m.? Victor stared at him. You don't seriously think I had anything to do with David's death? Oh no. No. It's just routine, you understand? We have to establish where everyone was. I was at home until 8:25 a.m., then I came straight to campus. I arrived around 8:50 and went directly to my laboratory. Can anyone confirm that? My wife can confirm I was at home, and my laboratory assistant saw me arrive around 8:50. Good, good. Columbo stood up to leave, then stopped as if he had just thought of something. Oh, just one last thing. This complaint to the ethics committee you were going to file, did you file it eventually? No, I was going to do it this morning, but, well, with David's death, it doesn't really matter anymore. No, I suppose not. Columbo thanked him and left the office. In the hallway, he ran into a woman in her 30s wearing a lab coat and carrying a stack of files. She looked devastated. Excuse me, said Columbo. Lieutenant Columbo, Los Angeles Police. You are Dr. Sarah Martinez. I was Professor Chen's postdoctoral assistant. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. My condolences. You're the one who found him this morning. Yes, it was horrible. He was just slumped over his desk. At first I thought he had fallen asleep, but when I got closer, she shivered. I understand. It's hard. Tell me, Dr. Martinez, did you notice anything unusual this morning? Something out of the ordinary? Sarah thought. Well, Professor Chen was already in his office when I arrived around 8:30. His door was closed, which was a little unusual. Normally he kept it open. I knocked and he told me to come in. He looked preoccupied, tense. Did he tell you why? He mentioned something about his argument with Professor Thornton the day before. He said he was afraid Thornton would try to sabotage his career with false accusations. He was afraid of Thornton. Not physically, but professionally, yes. Professor Thornton is very powerful in the department. He has a lot of influence. If he really wanted to harm someone's career, he could. I see. And the coffee Professor Chen was drinking this morning, do you know where it came from? From his personal thermos, as always. He brought his own coffee from home every day. Did you see him drink from that coffee? Yes, he was drinking it when I entered his office. He took a few sips while we were talking. And how long did you stay with him? Maybe 10 minutes. Then I went to the laboratory to start the day's experiments. It was when I came back around 11 a.m. to show him some results that I found him dead. Columbo nodded, taking notes. One last question, Dr. Martinez. Could anyone else have had access to Professor Chen's office this morning before you arrived? I don't know. The building is open from 7 a.m. Anyone in the department could technically enter. Are there security cameras? Only at the main entrances of the building, not in the interior hallways. After thanking Dr. Martinez, Columbo went down to the ground floor where the campus security office was located. The head of security, a former police officer named Frank Morrison, received him eagerly. Lieutenant, of course. What can I do for you? I'd like to see the surveillance camera recordings from this morning, specifically those showing the entrance to the biology building. Morrison brought up the videos on his computer. What time period are you interested in? Let's say from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. They watched the recordings together on fast forward. Several people entered and exited: students, professors, maintenance staff. Then Columbo saw something interesting. Stop there. Can you go back and slow it down? Morrison obeyed. The image showed Victor Thornton entering the building carrying his usual briefcase and what appeared to be a small box or package. He said he arrived around 9 a.m., murmured Columbo, but there he is at almost 8 a.m. Maybe he got the time wrong, suggested Morrison. Maybe. Or maybe he was lying. Victor Thornton had lied about the time of his arrival. But why? And what was he carrying in that small box? Columbo felt that the respected professor was hiding something crucial. Columbo spent the rest of the afternoon questioning other members of the biology department. Everyone confirmed the intense rivalry between Thornton and Chen, but no one imagined it could lead to murder. The next morning, the medical examiner's report arrived. As suspected, David Chen had been poisoned. The poison used was strychnine, a highly toxic substance that causes convulsions and death within minutes. Analysis of the coffee cup and the thermos confirmed the presence of strychnine in both. So the poison was already in the thermos before he poured his coffee, said Columbo on the phone with the medical examiner. Which means he was poisoned either at home before he left, or someone poured the poison into his thermos after he arrived at the office but before he drank his coffee. That's correct. And the amount was massive enough to kill several people. Whoever did this wanted to make sure Chen died quickly. Columbo hung up and thought. He needed to check Thornton's alibi more carefully. He went to Thornton's house, an elegant colonial-style home in the upscale Pasadena neighborhood. Mrs. Thornton, an elegant woman in her 50s, received him with icy courtesy. "Lieutenant, my husband told me you might come. I suppose you want to verify his alibi. If you don't mind, ma'am, just a few routine questions." She led him into an impeccably decorated living room. "What do you want to know?" "Your husband says he was here until 8:25 a.m. on Wednesday. Is that correct?" "Yes. We had breakfast together around 7:30, then he left for the university around 8:25. Are you sure of the time?" "Absolutely. I looked at the clock because I had a dentist appointment at 9 a.m. and I wanted to make sure I had enough time." "I see. And during breakfast, what was your husband's mood?" "Tense. He was preoccupied with that matter with Professor Chen. He had talked to me about it the night before, how Chen might have stolen his data, how he was going to file a complaint. He was angry." "Yes, but not explosively. Victor is very controlled. He becomes cold when he's angry, not loud." Columbo nodded. "Mrs. Thornton, does your husband have access to poisons or dangerous chemicals?" She stared at him, surprised. "Why are you asking that? You think Victor poisoned David Chen?" "I'm not thinking anything yet, ma'am. I'm just asking questions." "Well, Victor works in a molecular biology laboratory. They have all kinds of chemicals there, but they would never bring them home." "Are you certain?" "As certain as one can be." After leaving Mrs. Thornton, Columbo went to Victor's laboratory and asked to speak with the chemical safety officer. "Strychnine," said the officer, a young man named Dr. Kumar. "Yes, we have it. It's used in some of our research on neurotransmitters, but it's strictly controlled. Every time someone takes some, they must log it in the register." "May I see that register?" Dr. Kumar led him to a secure cabinet where controlled substances were kept. He took out a large notebook and opened it. "Let's see. The last time strychnine was taken out was 2 weeks ago by Professor Thornton himself. How much did he take?" 10 mg. That's the standard amount for our experimental protocols. And are you sure he used it for legitimate experiments? Well, he signed the register and noted the experimental protocol number. I can check if you want. Please. Dr. Kumar consulted a computer and then frowned. That's strange. The protocol he noted, number 2847, does not exist in our database. All protocols must be registered before controlled substances can be withdrawn. So he lied about the reason he was taking the strychnine. Apparently. But I don't understand why he would do that. Professor Thornton is extremely rigorous about safety procedures. Columbo thanked him and returned to Victor Thornton's office. This time the professor seemed less composed when Columbo entered. Lieutenant Columbo, you again? What can I do for you? Oh, just a few more questions, Professor. You know how it is. The more we dig, the more things we find that bother us. What things? Well, for starters, I checked the building's security recordings. You entered at 7:53 a.m. on Wednesday, but you told me you arrived around 9 a.m. Victor paled slightly. I got the time wrong. I was upset by everything that was happening. I didn't pay attention to the exact time. Your wife says you left home at 8:25. That gives you just enough time to arrive here around 8:50, not around 7:50. I don't know what to tell you, Lieutenant. Maybe the camera had the wrong time. Maybe. But there's something else that bothers me. You withdrew strychnine from the laboratory 2 weeks ago, 10 milligrams. But the experimental protocol you noted does not exist. Victor stood up abruptly. Are you accusing me of something, Lieutenant? I'm just asking questions. Why did you take strychnine if it wasn't for an experiment? It was for an experiment. I must have written the wrong protocol number when I filled out the register. It's an administrative error, nothing more. And what were you carrying Wednesday morning when you entered the building? The security camera shows you had a small box or package with you. I don't remember. Probably just my usual things. Your assistant says you never bring anything other than your briefcase. Victor sat back down, running a hand through his hair. All right, Lieutenant. You want the truth? Yes, I was in the office earlier than I said. And yes, I took strychnine for a reason that wasn't entirely legal. I'm listening. There are rats in the walls of the building. It was driving me crazy. I couldn't concentrate with their constant scratching. So I took some strychnine to make my own rat poison. I know I should have gone through official channels, but I wanted to solve the problem quickly. And Wednesday morning, you were bringing that rat poison. Yes, I was going to place it in the walls, but when I arrived, I saw that David's office was already open. I decided to wait and do it later. I didn't want him to see me with the poison and start asking questions. So you kept the poison with you all day? No, I put it in my office in a locked drawer. It's still there if you want to check. Columbo stared at him for a long time. You know what bothers me most about your story, Professor Thornton? No. It's that it's too convenient, too well explained, as if you had time to prepare exactly what to say if someone discovered you had taken strychnine. I'm telling the truth. Maybe. Or maybe you took that strychnine 2 weeks ago with the intention of killing David Chen. Maybe Wednesday morning you arrived very early. You poured the poison into his thermos while he was in the bathroom or busy elsewhere. Then you left and came back later to establish an alibi. That's absurd. Why would I kill David? Because he was about to win the Nobel Prize you coveted. Because he had surpassed you professionally even though he was supposed to be your student. And because he threatened you when you said you were going to file a complaint against him. Victor Thornton's lies were beginning to pile up: the strychnine, the incorrect arrival time, the mysterious package. But Columbo needed more than a series of suspicious coincidences. He needed solid proof. Victor Thornton immediately hired a lawyer, one of the best criminal lawyers in Los Angeles. The lawyer advised Victor not to speak to the police anymore without his presence, but Columbo did not give up. He knew Victor was involved. He could feel it in his bones. But how to prove it? He returned to examine the crime scene, this time with a team of crime scene technicians. "I want you to look for fingerprints everywhere," said Columbo. "On the thermos, on the desk, on the door handle, everything." The technicians worked for hours. Finally, they found something interesting. "Lieutenant, look at this," said one of the technicians. "We found fingerprints on the thermos that do not match the victims." "Whose are they?" "We're comparing them to the database now. But there's something strange. The fingerprints are on the side of the thermos, not on the lid or the top, as if someone held the thermos by the side while pouring something into it. Someone wearing gloves so as not to leave prints on the lid." "But who touched the side by accident?" murmured Columbo. An hour later, the results came back. The fingerprints belonged to Victor Thornton. Columbo immediately called the prosecutor. "We have Thornton's fingerprints on the victim's thermos. That gives us enough for an arrest warrant." "Not necessarily," said the prosecutor cautiously. "Thornton and Chen worked in the same department. He could have an innocent explanation for touching the thermos. We need more." Columbo hung up, frustrated. He decided to try a different approach. He went back to speak with Dr. Sarah Martinez, Chen's assistant. "Dr. Martinez, I need to know something very specific. Could Professor Thornton have touched Professor Chen's thermos for a legitimate reason?" Sarah thought. They barely spoke to each other these last few months because of their rivalry. "I can't imagine any reason why Professor Thornton would touch David's thermos. Never. Not even by accident or in passing. No. David kept his thermos either in his office or in the laboratory refrigerator. Professor Thornton never went into David's office. He only communicated by email or during department meetings." That was exactly what Columbo wanted to hear. He returned to confront Victor Thornton, this time with his lawyer present. "Professor Thornton, your fingerprints are on David Chen's thermos. How do you explain that?" Victor exchanged a look with his lawyer. "I can't explain it. I never touched his thermos." "Then how did your fingerprints get on it?" "I don't know. Maybe he borrowed my thermos at some point and we mixed them up." "No," said Columbo. "Dr. Martinez confirms that you never shared a thermos. In fact, she says you never went into his office." The lawyer intervened. "Lieutenant, fingerprints don't prove anything. My client could have touched that thermos at any time for any reason. Without direct proof that he put poison in it, you have nothing." Columbo knew the lawyer was right. He needed something more concrete. He decided to try one last approach. "Professor Thornton, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you what I think happened on Wednesday morning." "I don't need to hear your theories," said Victor coldly. "Oh, indulge me for just 1 minute. You see, I think you planned this murder for 2 weeks. Ever since David published that article in Nature, you realized he was probably going to win the Nobel Prize, the prize you had coveted for decades. And that drove you mad. That's ridiculous. So you took strychnine from the laboratory by inventing a fake protocol number. You waited for the right moment, and on Wednesday morning you arrived at the office very early, around 7:50 a.m., well before David usually arrived. I explained why I was there for rat poison. Yes, that's what you said, but I think that was a lie. I think you entered David's office. Maybe you had a key, or maybe the door wasn't locked. You knew he kept his thermos in his office refrigerator. You poured the strychnine into the thermos, then you left. You can't prove that. Not yet. But here's what bothers me. If you were wearing gloves so as not to leave fingerprints, how is it that your fingerprints are still on the thermos?" Victor did not answer, but Columbo saw a bead of sweat appear on his forehead. "I'll tell you what I think. I think you did wear gloves, but when you took the thermos out of the refrigerator, it was cold and slippery. It started to slip from your hands. By reflex, you tightened your grip and your fingers slightly slipped out of the gloves just enough to leave a few partial fingerprints on the side of the thermos." Victor's face had turned white. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Victor seemed not to hear. "But there's one thing I still don't understand," continued Columbo. "If you were wearing gloves, where are they now? Did you throw them away? Burn them?" "I never wore gloves," said Victor, but his voice lacked conviction. "No? Then you admit you touched the thermos?" Victor realized his mistake. "No, I mean, I don't know how the fingerprints got there." His lawyer intervened firmly. "This conversation is over. Professor Thornton will not answer any more of your questions." Columbo nodded. "Very well. But I have one last question. Professor Thornton, where is the package you were carrying Wednesday morning when you entered the building? The one the security camera filmed? I told you it was rat poison. Show it to me." "What? You said you put it in your office in a locked drawer. Show it to me." Victor hesitated for a long time. "I used it. There's none left. You used the entire package in 3 days for rats that no one else has ever seen or heard. The rats are gone. The poison worked." Columbo smiled slightly. "Professor Thornton, I think that package did not contain rat poison. I think it contained the strychnine you had prepared and probably the gloves you wore. And I think you got rid of it right after poisoning David Chen. You can't prove anything. Maybe not today. But I'm going to keep looking, and sooner or later I will find the proof I need." Victor Thornton was trapped in his own lies, his fingerprints on the thermos, his alibi that didn't hold, the mysterious package that had disappeared. But Columbo still needed one final, irrefutable piece of evidence to bring down the arrogant professor. Over the following days, Columbo methodically searched every aspect of Victor Thornton's life. He questioned colleagues, students, and cleaning staff, and finally he found what he was looking for thanks to a cleaning lady named Rosa Mendez. Rosa had worked in the biology department for 15 years. She cleaned the offices and laboratories early in the morning before the professors and students arrived. "Mrs. Mendez," said Columbo, "you were at work last Wednesday morning, weren't you?" "Yes, Lieutenant. I always arrive at 6 a.m. "Did you see Professor Thornton that morning?" "Yes. He arrived very early, around 7:50. That was unusual. Normally he doesn't arrive before 9 a.m. "Where exactly did you see him?" "In the hallway on the 3rd floor. He was coming out of Professor Chen's office." Columbo sat up straight. "Are you certain he was coming out of Chen's office?" "Absolutely certain. I was cleaning the hallway. He came out quickly, looking, how can I say, nervous. He was wearing blue surgical gloves." "Surgical gloves? Are you sure?" "Yes. I recognized them because my husband works at the hospital and he wears the same ones." Professor Thornton was taking them off as he walked down the hallway. "What did he do with the gloves?" "He put them in his pocket. Then he saw me and seemed surprised. He said hello and left quickly." "Mrs. Mendez, why didn't you tell me this earlier?" "No one asked me, and I didn't know it was important until I heard that Professor Chen had been poisoned." Columbo finally had his crucial witness. But he still needed one more thing: the gloves themselves. He obtained a new search warrant, this time for Victor Thornton's house and car. The crime scene team searched meticulously for hours, and in the trunk of Victor's car, hidden under the floor mat, they found a pair of blue surgical gloves. Tests revealed microscopic traces of strychnine inside the gloves. It was the final proof. Victor Thornton was arrested at his home on Friday evening. When the police arrived with the arrest warrant, He did not seem surprised. He only asked to dress properly before leaving. At the station, faced with all the accumulated evidence, Victor finally broke. His lawyer advised him not to say anything, but Victor suddenly seemed tired of lying, tired of everything. "You want to know why?" he said to Columbo in the interrogation room. "You really want to know why I killed David?" "Yes, I want to know. Because he stole my life. I spent decades building my career, making sacrifices, working until exhaustion. And then David, my own student, comes along and in 15 years surpasses me. He publishes the article I should have published. He makes the discovery I should have made. So you killed him out of jealousy. Not just jealousy. Rage. Frustration. Do you know what it's like to see someone younger, less experienced, steal the glory you deserve? He didn't steal anything from you. He did his own work. No, he used my data, my ideas. I had presented them at a confidential seminar. He took everything and published it as his own. Do you have proof of that?" Victor remained silent for a moment. "No, no concrete proof. But I knew it. I felt it." "So you killed him based on a feeling, based on your own insecurity and jealousy. Call it what you want. All I know is that on Wednesday morning, when I entered his office and poured that poison into his thermos, I finally felt relieved, as if I was regaining control." "And how do you feel now?" Victor stared at him with empty eyes. "Empty. Completely empty." Victor Thornton's trial attracted national attention. A distinguished professor, Nobel Prize candidate, accused of poisoning his rival out of professional jealousy. The media ran headlines for weeks. The jury deliberated for 2 days. The verdict was unanimous: guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. Sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. After the trial, Columbo met with Dr. Sarah Martinez, who had testified during the trial. "Lieutenant Columbo, I wanted to thank you for finding the truth about what happened to Professor Chen. It's my job. But tell me, Dr. Martinez, what will happen to Professor Chen's research, to his discovery on cancer treatment? His team is continuing the work. We will honor his memory by pursuing what he started. And who knows, maybe one day the treatment he developed will save lives. That would be the most beautiful monument to his memory." Columbo nodded. "Yes, that would be good. You know, this case taught me something." "What?" "That rivalry and competition can be healthy. They can push us to be better, to work harder. But when they become pure jealousy, when they consume us to the point that we can no longer see the value of other people's work, that's when things go wrong." Professor Thornton ruined his own life. Yes, he had a brilliant career, the respect of his peers, a family, and he threw it all away out of jealousy. Now David Chen is dead and Thornton will spend the rest of his life in prison. 2 lives destroyed. And why? Sarah did not answer. There was no satisfactory answer to that question. A few weeks later, Columbo received a letter from Victor Thornton from prison. It was brief. "Lieutenant Columbo, you were right. Yes, I killed David out of pure jealousy. Not because he stole my work, he didn't, but because he was better than me and I couldn't accept it. I spent my life chasing glory, recognition, awards. And in the end, what did I gain? Nothing. I lost everything that really mattered. If I could go back, I would do things differently. I would learn to appreciate my own accomplishments instead of constantly comparing myself to others. I would learn that true greatness comes from contributing to the good of humanity, not from collecting trophies. But it is too late now. All I can do is live with the consequences of my choices." Victor Thornton. Columbo folded the letter and placed it in his desk. He had solved many murders over the years, but this one troubled him particularly because, at its core, Victor Thornton was not a monster. He was simply a man who had allowed his inner demons, jealousy, insecurity, the need for validation, to turn him into someone he would never have thought he could become. That evening, as he returned home, Columbo thought about the case. A rivalry that had gone terribly wrong. Two brilliant scientists whose lives had been destroyed by one man's inability to accept the success of the other. "You know," he said to his wife over dinner, "I learned something in this case about human nature." "What?" "Sometimes our worst enemy is ourselves, not others, ourselves." Victor Thornton wasn't destroyed by David Chen. He was destroyed by his own inability to find satisfaction in his own accomplishments. He spent his life looking at what others had instead of appreciating what he had himself. It's sad. Yes, it's very sad. Because Victor was a brilliant scientist. He had made important contributions to his field, but he couldn't see it. He only saw what David had and what he didn't have. The rivalry that had gone wrong ended with one man dead and another in prison for life. But the lessons of this tragedy echoed long after the case file was closed. In the university's biology department, professors now spoke openly about the importance of collaboration rather than competition, of celebrating colleagues' successes rather than envying them. And Columbo, as always, filed the case away and moved on to the next one. Because unfortunately there would always be other rivalries, other jealousies, other moments when the worst aspects of human nature would lead to tragedy. But for this night at least, justice had been served. And that, dear listeners, is how this story ends. An academic rivalry that turned into murder. Two brilliant careers destroyed by jealousy. And justice patiently served thanks to the tenacity of Lieutenant Columbo. I hope this investigation captivated you and will accompany you toward a peaceful sleep. If you enjoyed this adventure with Lieutenant Columbo, we would be delighted if you let us know in the comments. Tell us what you thought of this story. And if you wish to help us continue creating these beautiful stories for you, you can support us via YouTube Super Thanks. There is no obligation and no required amount, just give whatever your heart dictates if you have the means and the desire. But even if you cannot or do not wish to contribute financially, your presence here tonight, your attentive listening, and the like you might leave on this video are already priceless gifts to us. Thank you so much for being here. Good night, everyone. Sleep well, dream peacefully, and remember, true greatness comes from appreciating your own accomplishments, not envying those of others. See you very soon for a new story.